Welcome to the Divorce Survival Guide podcast, where we have open and honest conversations about co-parenting, separation, divorce, and the hardest question of all, should you stay or should you go? I'm Kate Anthony, your Divorce Survival Guide, and I'm here to help you navigate some of the roughest waters you've ever swum in and answer some of your toughest questions. I've been to hell and back, and now it's my mission in life to help you get to the other side of this process with your sanity and your heart intact. Hey everyone, welcome back. This is a really special episode. I can't believe that we are here. We have reached episode 300, and we have done it on Thanksgiving. How did that happen? I feel like the stars aligned, and I am so overwhelmed with so much gratitude. I am grateful that you have gone on this journey with me. I am so grateful for you, all of you, my incredible listeners. You are the heart and soul of this show. You tune in, week out, week after week, and you have shared your stories with me, your thoughts, your experiences. Every time I get on the phone with a client, almost all of my clients come to me after having listened to the podcast. And every time I get on the phone with a new client, one of the first things they will say is how much the podcast has meant to them, how they could not have gone through this journey without it. You know, that's all I need to hear to be able to continue to do what I do. This is an incredibly difficult journey for all of you. And that you tune in to my podcast to help you through it is, I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful. Truly brings tears to my eyes. I'm so grateful. And I am humbled. Truly humbled. This podcast is in the top 0.5% of all podcasts. What? It completely blows me away. Of all the podcasts in the world, we are in the top 5%, and that's because of you. Truly. It's about the fact that you want to do the work. It's about the fact that you are eager, willing to turn yourselves inside out every week, knowing that you're probably going to get confronted by something really, really hard. You still show up. You show up here, you put your earbuds in, you go for your walk, whatever it is that you do, however you listen. Today, I'm celebrating an incredible milestone of hitting episode 300, but really I'm celebrating you. And I'm celebrating the community that we've built together, whether you know it or not. You're part of a community because, hello, top 0.5% of all podcasts. That means that there are a lot of you out there. You're not alone. You're not alone. So to celebrate, I'm going to be revisiting some old episodes and some of the, listener favorites that have sparked conversations that have seemed to have helped you guys the most. And like I said, this episode is my love letter to you. It's a thank you for being part of this community, but really for bringing me along with your journey, for trusting me with your stories, your hearts, your experiences on this incredibly difficult road, and for inspiring me every single day to keep showing up and doing what I do. Truly, from the bottom of my heart to yours, happy Thanksgiving and welcome to episode 300. So this first clip is from one of my oldest episodes, episode 55 out of 300. And it is from a very, very high-ranking listener favorite called Not Your Fucking Job. This is a list of all of the things that are not your fucking job.
It's not your job to leave him reminder notes of all of the things that need to get done if you're going away for a girls' weekend or or a trip or a work trip or whatever it is, right? It's not your fucking job to leave reminder notes all over the house for all the things that you need him to do. Again, he's a fucking grown-up. And if he does the things, great. And if he doesn't do the things, you don't get to control what happens in your house when you're not there. You just don't. Unless your children's safety is at risk. He may take the children to that birthday party unshowered, with their hair uncombed, and with no birthday present. That might happen. And if that happens, it's not your fucking job to do anything about it. That's on him, right? If you're going away, go away. And my guess is that if he goes away, he doesn't leave you a bunch of lists and tasks and things that need to get done, right? This goes for people who are divorced. You know, one of the things that happened when I got divorced was that I realized as a stay-at-home mom, I had been responsible for everything in the house. And then when we got divorced, my ex-husband suddenly had to be responsible for all sorts of things that he had never been responsible for. And he would call me in a panic and I would say, I am sure you can figure it out. And he did, because I didn't do it for him. If I had continued to do everything for him, he never would have figured it out. But the very first weekend that he had a birthday party that was on his weekend and he had not planned ahead, it was like half an hour before the birthday party and he texted me in a panic that he didn't have a present. And I was like, oh, well, guess you'll have to stop at Target on the way. That was it. I didn't clean it up for him. He said, well, what am I going to get him? And I said, gosh, I don't know. You know, maybe you should text his mom. Right? Like, that's as far as I went. And now, I'll tell you what, my ex is far more on top of this shit than I am. So it's not your job to leave him reminder notes, to buy birthday presents for parties that land on his weekend with the kids. Not your fucking job. It's not your fucking job to shop and cook before you go out of town for the weekend. I remember when I was still married and I was going out of town, I had one child. One child. And I was going out of town for the weekend and I was going to a conference or something. And I was with my friend Greg in the playground, and Greg had 3 children, two twin toddlers and like an infant at the time. And I said, oh my God, I have so much to do before I go. I'm going to have to shop and cook and before I go. And he turned to me and he said, I've always been of the mind that you shouldn't have any more children than you're able to handle and take care of on your own. I was like, oh shit. And he was right. He was right. So it's not your job to prepare everything and set everything up, before you go out of town, if you're still married.
This next clip is from the same episode, and it's a really tough one because I hear so many women's stories, so many women talking about, but he has so much trauma, and so many of you have given your partners so much leeway over the years. You have given him so much grace. You have given so much, you've so much slack on that rope because of your partner's trauma, because of, right, they're only an addict because of what happened to them as a child and all of those things, right? And we tend to put their trauma and their difficulties so much, we elevate them so much higher than our own experiences and our own trauma. And it's like, he only hurts me because he was hurt as a child, but now you're hurt, right? So from the same episode, number 55, not your fucking job, here's another clip all about that.
It's not your job to get someone sober or to get them to quit drinking or to get them to otherwise deal with any of their addictions. It is not your job to heal someone else's addiction. It will not work. It's not your job to heal their anxiety. Here's a tough one. It's not your fucking job to tell him you love him enough that he finally believes it. If he has an unfillable hole, if he has a hole, as someone said, I think recently, whether it was on Instagram or on my Facebook, something about a bucket with a hole in the bottom of it. You know, those unfillable buckets? If he has an unfillable bucket that is from his deep childhood wound of not having been loved as a child, you will never pour enough love into that bucket to fill it, ever, because he has to do the work to seal that hole and fill the hole first before you'll ever be able to fill that bucket.
And this is the last clip from episode 55, Not Your Fucking Job, in which I get a little ragey and you can feel my feminist fire burning real fucking hot.
So it's not your job to lose weight to meet somebody else's impossible standards. It's not your job to dye your hair, get a boob job, cut your hair, lose weight, gain weight, exercise, unless you fucking want to. It's not your fucking job to do any of those things in order to be enough or feel attractive enough for another person. It's not your fucking job to smile. It's not your fucking job to be nice all the time. It's not your fucking job to be his mother, to keep his schedule, to clean up his mess, to remind him to attend parent-teacher conferences. If you are divorced, you need to get one email address that is like schoolshit@gmail.com or whatever, aidenschool@gmail.com that both of you have access to, that goes to both of your email accounts, and that all of the school stuff goes to. This way, everything is always in both of your inboxes and there is no excuse for, you didn't tell me, I didn't know. It's not your fucking job to tell him how amazing he is every single day so he feels good about himself. It's not your fucking job to single-handedly bring passion to your relationship. I think you get the picture here. It's not your fucking job to change to avoid conflict. It's not your fucking job to put things in your name because his credit was wrecked, and so now you have to bear the financial burden of the marriage. There's an ongoing list. There's even more here. There's so much, right? But here's the deal. If you want to be in an equal partnership with another human being, you have to this is your fucking job. Here is your fucking job. It is your fucking job to set the standard for what equal partnership means and not step outside of it.
Our next set of clips is from episode 156, Divorcing Your Narcissist. You Can't Make This Shit Up, with Tracy Malone. Tracy's book of the same title, Divorcing Your Narcissist, You Can't Make This Shit Up, is a must read. Seriously, run, don't walk to your Amazon cart or wherever you buy books and make sure you have this book on hand. So the first clip that I'm going to play you is about what happens when they try to get you back, when they suddenly realize that you're serious. And then they come in with what Tracy identifies as the Trojan horse to try and win you back.
I call it the Trojan horse in the book.
Yes.
Is that nice comes out and they promise to go to counseling. They promise to do everything you've always wanted them to do. But really what it is doing, it is just sort of another ploy for them to now go, okay, they're on to me. I'm going to hide the assets better. Now that gets ramped up while you're sitting here going, oh, they're going to take care of me financially. I'll be okay. And you put your trust back into them. And while you're sitting there trusting, they sit there and hide assets and like really blow away the case.
And continue the abuse, right? Once they get you settled back in, then they think they've won, they've changed your mind. And then after a certain period of time, they just start back. Right, back into the abuse.
In this next clip, Tracy talks about really the importance of, first of all, knowing the law so that you are not going to be manipulated by someone who's saying you're going to lose the house, lose the kids, get no money, blah, blah, blah. Really understanding the law. And then also the importance of planning as far in advance as possible. So let's take a listen.
I think if we understand what our rights are, because narcissists lie. Again,
right.
You'll never have anything. You'll never get them. This sort of like gaslighting really does control the victim, especially if they were a stay-at-home parent. They can easily be taught you have no rights, you'll get nothing. And so therefore we sort of stop and stumble upon putting more details in there because we don't feel we're entitled to make those requests, right? We have to know what the law is and protect ourselves from every single thing from, it might sound stupid, but what age are our kids going to get a phone? Who's going to pay for their driving lessons? Who's going to pay for the insurance? Most people don't even think that far ahead. They might go all the way to college, but they're not going to think about the events that happen. And, often it's the non-narc parent that's making the schedule for the kids and deciding what camps to go to.
That's right.
But you've got to plan all that out. And if you don't do it now, you will be back in court doing it later.
And in this last clip from episode 156 with Tracy Malone, we talk about radical acceptance and what that really means and why it is so incredibly important.
And I think the hardest thing for people to do is to learn to let go of the things you cannot change. Mm-hmm. This is radical acceptance, right? This is, I cannot change that they will always do this until my kids are 18. I cannot change that. And yet that radical acceptance of that is sort of like, we want to fix it, but we can't. So letting go that they will continue to be a pain in the butt until they're not in our life any longer is part of it. It's not condoning it. It's not saying it's okay. It's not holding on to the injustice of it all. Because that injustice eats at your soul.
That's
that
right.
Injustice, that anger, that hurt, that like, how could they, is what blows it out of the water for years and years and years unless you get help and learn to let go of that.
In episode 161, I answered some of your questions directly on the air. I had a bit of a listener Q&A series, and we're actually bringing that back, by the way. So if you have questions that you want me to answer on the air, anonymously, of course, submit them on kateanthony.com/questions. And I will be doing some Q&A episodes later in, I think this year and early next. So yeah, kateanthony.com/questions. But in episode 161, I answered a few of your questions. And this one was really about this really difficult line between sort of not wanting to tell your kids the quote truth, but also not wanting to lie to them and gaslight them. So what is that line? How do you acknowledge a really difficult truth about a co-parent without being accused of alienation, all of the things? Really important question. And it's something that I think we all struggle with at some point or another. So let's take a listen to what I had to say about that on episode 161. It's not throwing them under the bus to just acknowledge the truth, because we can't gaslight our kids. So when they are experiencing something that feels really difficult or messed up or, confusing, the worst thing we can do is be like, what are you talking about? He's fine. Oh, he's just your dad, No, yeah, I understand. It's really hard. That's a hard thing about your dad. I struggled with that as well. Here's what I found useful. Here's how I was able to communicate with your dad about these things. Here's what I suggest. And at the end of the day, they are, again, an adult and about to be adult. And they are going to be able to choose their relationship with their father. If you see any concerning, super codependent traits showing up, because that's, the other thing that can happen with children of covert narcissists is that they're constantly trying to please their parents so they don't get in trouble. As having been married to him, right, there's a constant moving target of, satisfaction. You probably spent a good portion of your marriage trying to hit that target and then hit the target, and then it would move. And then you'd be like, okay, well, I'll do this, and then everything will be fine, and I'll do this. And if you notice that behavior in your children, you may want to gently point it out to them and have an open discussion with them about it. Again, without throwing their dad under the bus. Tricky balance, but also a really important one to strike.
And our last clip from this Q&A episode, a listener wrote in asking how to help her adult children to come to terms with and heal from the abuse that they may not even know had impacted them quite so much.
I enjoyed your podcast with Leanne Oten. In it, you mentioned doing a podcast on how all of the abuse affects the kids. I have 2 boys that are now over 18. My divorce was final in 2019, so they were 18 and 16 by the time I ended the 28-year marriage. We moved 3,200 miles away from the narc, and I am now fully no contact with him. The move has helped exponentially to find peace again. They seem okay, but deep down I worry about the effects of their life from my staying in it for so long, and I want to be able to help them appropriately. Anyway, I would just love to hear what you and Leanne have to say about this topic and how, as a mom, I can make sure I'm helping them out the right way. Okay, so at the end of the day, they're adults. The best thing you can do is make sure they're in therapy, help them to be in therapy. Look, I think that I think parents should always pay for their children's therapy. I mean, for fuck's sake. Really? Because what are we talking about in therapy? Our parents. So I think parents should always pay for therapy. So if you can pay for them to go to therapy, if you can afford it, then do it, and make sure that they are with a therapist who has an understanding and advanced training, if at all possible, in healing from narcissistic abuse. And if you talk to a therapist and they're like, yeah, I mean, I kind of do, blah, blah, no. Or if they're like, sure, that was part of our, initial training. No, you want advanced training. You want someone who's like, yes, this, I know exactly what this is, and this is what I do. So make sure that they have a really good therapist. And it sounds like you moved 3,200 miles away. You are no contact. It sounds to me like there's no pussyfooting around what happened. My assumption is, I don't know if your kids moved with you or if they are still in contact with their other parent, that, if they are, like, if they're also no contact and all of that, like, this can be a really frank conversation. And I think you can say to them, listen, your whole life was steeped in this. I was steeped in it for 28 years. And I have a lot of years, on before and after. But this was the air you breathed for, 16 and 18 years of your lives. As an adult, as your mom, I want you to know that I feel very strongly that there's a lot of damage that is probably done by this. And I know you say you're okay, but I do worry about the effects of me having stayed in this relationship for so long. So I want you to know that I am here to help you to talk about it. And I also very much think that being in therapy would be the most important thing for your healing, because I don't want you to repeat these patterns. I don't want you. And then talk to them about the fact that repeating these patterns is an unconscious thing. This is not conscious, right? We do this stuff unconsciously. That therapy can help rewire that unconscious narrative, the neural connections that have us choose, similar to our upbringing and our parents and the wounding that we experience as children. So be really honest about it. Talk to them about it. Again, I think just being really open with your kids about it. Just be really open with them.
This next episode is episode 163,
Covert Emotional Abuse with Annette Oltmans. Every time I've had Annette on the podcast, you guys have really loved her and gotten so much out of it. And there's something she touched on in this episode that we ended up going back and doing another full episode on. But this clip sort of starts the conversation about why it is so dangerous to go to therapy with an abuser.
I would say, why did you want to drag me all over these places? And he goes, because I thought I would be right. He really just wanted to win.
Yes.
To win. I wanted a secure attachment. I wanted emotional intimacy and connection. He wanted to win. He wasn't after, yes, he wanted to have a happy marriage, but he didn't see that he had any part to play.
Right. Of course. Of course not. So once they're in there, what are some of the tactics that they use during sort of sabotage?
Yeah, right. They'll use anything and everything, just like covert emotional abuse. They'll use it on the therapist. So let's say that the therapist notices that they're blame shifting a lot and they call out blame shifting. The abuser might stop blame shifting, but they'll shift over to some other behavior. They will be defensive. They will not be showing signs that they cherish their spouse's feelings. They won't be showing signs of empathy. They might say, oh, she's the most important person in the world to me, which can be very confusing for the therapist and for the spouse, but their actions are incongruent. Yeah. And if you need to apologize for something, the affect won't line up with the words. You'll see that it will be that reptilian, cold, aloof apology. It won't be one that's really trying to be convincing and sincere, where they take ownership, where they're willing to follow through with reparations. Let's say they slandered their spouse, the victim spouse. They should then have to not only sincerely apologize, but reach out and correct their behavior, which takes a lot of humility.
Right.
But an abuser, humility is humiliation. And so there's a lot of defensiveness.
I think it's really interesting, right, that we were talking about that their number one goal in therapy, right? If you say, like, what are your goals? And of course, the abuser will say, like, well, to, stop having these problems, or to be more, to have a happy marriage, or stop arguing, stop fighting. But really their goal is to win.
That's right.
And later on in the episode, Annette and I talk a little bit more about exiting the therapeutic relationship with your abuser and the importance of knowing your truth and how hard that can be in this process and how vital it is. Let's hear what she has to say.
So it's hard to leave therapy, but I say try your very best to recognize that you are your own person. You are an adult. You know your truth. And try to tune out the noise that other people are making. And don't take that on. Don't allow that to define you, because that is you losing your own identity. You're giving it over to people who are not knowledgeable, and who I realize you may have felt that you had a secure attachment with them. They were your good family members or good friends or part of your social circle. But you have to be strong enough to be able to tune out that incorrect noise and stay to your truth and know that you're pursuing what's healthy and right, and that you will never attain that in a dysfunctional therapeutic relationship with your narcissist.
Okay, we're going to move on now to episode 177, Coercive Control with Dr. Christine Cocchiola. So Dr. Cocchiola is a coercive control advocate, educator, researcher, and survivor. And she is also my very dear friend. And in this episode, we explain what it is to be in a coercively controlling relationship. In this clip, we get into a little bit of a controversial topic, which is the conversation around who was the domestic abuser? Was it Johnny Depp or Amber Heard? And all domestic violence advocates and experts that I know have the same response. Here's Christine's.
Coercive controllers, when they begin to lose control, the number one thing that they seek is revenge. And so it wasn't about her trying to get revenge, but it was about him trying to get revenge over and over and over again. I mean, the things he said, the way the negative social media campaign was, there were just so many things. And, we talk about her being physically violent and then her minimizing it. Yeah, sure. She minimized it. People do that all the time. You push someone, they're like, oh, I didn't hurt you. People do that all the time. He put his hands around her throat.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's it right there. Boom.
He said things like, you don't exist. He said, you will be globally humiliated. And this is, by the way, this is when she actually went to him and said, let's just leave this all to the side. After she gets her restraining order, she says, let's not make our personal life public. She actually pleads with him. And he says, no, you want global humiliation, you're going to get it. So in other words, a victim is going to be someone who doesn't really wants to let's just walk away from this. Let's just not make this a huge deal. A perpetrator is going to do everything they can to get revenge. Mm-hmm. And that's, I believe, exactly what played out in this situation. Like multiple ways and multiple strategies over and over again.
Over and over and over again. Mm-hmm. And the fact that she's still walking upright at this point is
my God,
goddamn miracle.
The way that she was questioned on the stand and humiliated over and over again, I don't know how she did not lose her shit, to be honest with you. I don't know. She is an extremely strong woman.
And in this next clip from the same episode, Christine talks about how to know, where's your line? At what point is the relationship crossing into dangerous or unacceptable behavior, and how to know where those boundaries are, and how, most importantly, how we teach that to our children.
I just want to say to all the victims out there that we understand why you stay sometimes. Right. If you can leave, we hope that you do. We hope that you find a world of support. It takes a village to leave. It definitely is not a one-person show. It takes a village to leave. And what you're doing in this work is so important. And I'm grateful that people like you are doing this. I created a webinar that I haven't posted yet, but it's called Where is Your Line? Where is your line? So what is it? What are the signs that would make you say, is this healthy any longer? Or is this maybe going over into unhealthy? And if it's going over into unhealthy, are you seeing a progression of it getting even more and more unhealthy, right? And so it's so important that victims make decisions about where their boundaries are, right? And that no one has the right to tell you what to do or how to behave or how to dress. No one has the right to call you crazy. We live in a social media world where our young people are being exposed to all kinds of abusive behaviors online. That's wrong. And so it's really important that before you engage in relationships and before our children do, that we are having conversations about what's healthy and what's not. And if it's not healthy, then you don't need to be a part of that relationship. There's other people out there that you can engage in relationships with. Really important that we begin to have those conversations.
And in our last clip from this episode, I think this is one of Dr. Cocchiola's nuggets of intensely important wisdom that I think should be played on repeat and everyone should hear. And it's the difference between situational abuse versus coercive abuse. And that yes, sometimes
we behave really, really badly when we're being abused or not. But what's the difference between it being situational versus a pattern, a systematic pattern? So here is Dr. Cocchiola explaining that for us.
When someone is being coercively controlled, they're actually at the greatest risk for violence and or death, because coercive controllers are attempting to retain control, power and control in a relationship.
And that's why, I mean, yes, like you can't have financial abuse without coercive control. You can't have physical abuse without coercive control, right? Like it is the underlying foundation of all forms of domestic abuse.
Just about. So it's interesting because we do have like a kind of like two categories. We have this thing called situational violence, and it's when, two people are in an argument and they have what I would call maladaptive coping, where they get physical when they're mad. And so maybe one person gets physical and the other person doesn't. But here's the thing, it's not based on power and control. So I don't want to jump ahead, but it almost makes me think of this Amber Heard case, right? Because when she was physically violent with Johnny Depp, that was a maladaptive coping. That was I feel trapped. I don't know what to do. When I'm angry, I fight back. This is what I do. Mm-hmm. But there was not for her this desire to have power and control over him.
Right.
And that's the difference. So there are some cases of situational violence. It does occur where two people, one person, they just don't do a good job of dealing with their emotions. And so they fight back. But again, it's not based on power and control. Coercive control is the foundation of most, and that is when it is based on power and control.
All right, my loves, that is it for episode 300. Those are the clips I have pulled for you. And I really hope that giving these old episodes a refresh gave you back some nuggets that you can sort of ponder and chew on. And there's one more thing I want to make sure you're all aware of, and that is the Unbreakable Retreat that is happening in Sedona, Arizona at the end of April. And it is going to be amazing. I know that because I've done it before, and it was amazing the first time. So April 24th through 27th, 2025 in Sedona. Registration is open right now and spots are filling up. So if you head on over to kateanthony.com/unbreakable, you can read about it. You can join. Just want to give you, when I asked for some testimonials from the last go round, and one of the participants said, "The weekend I spent at Kate Anthony's retreat was nothing short of transformative. At a time in my life when I was overwhelmed with fear, uncertainty, and not a friend in sight, I was suddenly immersed in support, warm support, and friendship. The days were filled with teachings, exercises, and healing. After the retreat, I felt a shift in my thinking and in my outlook. I'm so grateful to Kate for taking us to a magical location for healing work. It was worth every penny." So if you want some of that, if you've been listening to this podcast episode and sort of basking in the warmth of being heard and being seen and being understood, that will happen for you in this retreat times a million. So head on over to kateanthony.com/unbreakable. And again, if you want to submit questions for a Q&A episode coming up, kateanthony.com/questions. I love and adore you all so much. I wish you the most magical Thanksgiving. I am so full of gratitude for every single one of you for showing up, putting in your earbuds, turning on my voice every week, and letting me share what I've learned through my journey with you. Happy Thanksgiving. I'm so grateful.
Thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Divorce Survival Guide podcast. If you like what you hear, head on over to Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen in and leave me a review. And don't forget to follow me on Instagram at The Divorce Survival Guide. I'll see you next time, and until then, remember, you, my love, deserve to be happy.